My name is Valerie. I am 34 years old, and I have spent my entire life feeling like I was never good enough for my family. My brother Jason was always the golden child who could do no wrong while I was the afterthought. When I won $5.2 million in the lottery last year, I thought my life would finally change for the better. Instead, I discovered just how far my family would go to take what was mine. I never imagined my own parents would try to take my winnings from me to fund my brother's dreams while crushing mine. If you are watching this from a family where you have felt overlooked or undervalued, drop a comment below letting me know where you are watching from. And subscribe to join others who understand what it is like to fight for your own worth. I grew up in a modest 3-bedroom house in suburban Pennsylvania with my parents and brother Jason, who is 2 years younger than me. From my earliest memories, it was clear who the favorite child was in our family. While both my parents would deny it if confronted, their actions spoke volumes about how they valued their children differently. When Jason showed interest in baseball at age 7, my parents immediately bought him top-of-the-line equipment. They spent hundreds of dollars on a premium glove bat and even private coaching sessions to nurture his talent. That same year, when I wanted to pursue art, I was given a set of secondhand colored pencils and told that art supplies were expensive and I needed to prove I was serious before they would invest more. This pattern repeated throughout our childhood. My parents never missed a single one of Jason's baseball games. They would rearrange their work schedules, cancel appointments, and drive hours to watch him play. Meanwhile, I could count on one hand the number of my art showcases they attended. Most of the time, they would drop me off and pick me up later, offering a cursory glance at my work while saying things like, "That is nice, honey," before shifting the conversation to something Jason had accomplished. When report cards came home, Jason's achievements were celebrated with family dinners out and small gifts. My straight A's were acknowledged with a nod and comments like, "Good job, but make sure you keep it up." When Jason struggled in certain subjects, my parents hired tutors immediately. When I needed help, I was told to figure it out myself because you are smart enough. Their justification was always the same. Jason has real potential. The unspoken implication was clear. I did not. My potential, my dreams, my achievements were secondary, less valuable, less worthy of support and attention. As the years passed, this constant comparison and favoritism shaped me in ways I did not fully understand until I was much older. I developed an intense self-reliance and a determination to prove my worth. I stopped asking my parents for help or validation. I learned to cheer for myself, to be my own supporter. I poured myself into my schoolwork and my art, seeking validation elsewhere from teachers who recognized my talent and friends who valued me. High school graduation crystallized the disparity between how my parents viewed their children. Jason received a brand new Ford Mustang, a vehicle he had been eyeing for months. I received a greeting card with $50 inside. When I expressed my hurt at the obvious disparity, my mother said, "Jason needed a reliable car for college, and we just cannot afford 2 vehicles right now." The fact that I would also be attending college seemed irrelevant to them. College further highlighted the divide. Jason attended a private university where our parents covered his tuition, housing, and gave him a monthly allowance. I attended community college while working 3 part-time jobs to pay my own way. When I asked for help during a particularly difficult semester, when my hours had been cut, my father suggested I take out loans, saying, "Jason's education is an investment in his future career. Your art degree is more of a hobby, right?" At 22, after 2 years of community college and struggling to balance work and school, I made the decision to move away. I packed everything I owned into my aging Honda Civic and drove to Chicago, determined to build a life where I would not constantly feel like I was living in someone else's shadow. I limited my contact with my family to occasional phone calls on holidays and brief visits every couple of years. It was easier that way. Every interaction with them left me feeling diminished, invisible, reminded of my place as the less important child. Over the next decade, I built a life separate from my family's influence. I created boundaries to protect myself from their habitual dismissal of my worth. But in the year before my lottery win, my mother had begun making overtures suggesting that we should try to be closer as a family. At the time, I interpreted this as genuine regret over our estrangement. I cautiously began to re-establish contact, calling more frequently, even visiting once for a weekend. I thought perhaps time had changed things, that my parents might finally see me as my own person, worthy of respect and recognition. How wrong I was. Looking back now, I see those reconnection attempts coincided exactly with when their financial troubles began. They were not reaching out to rebuild our relationship. They were setting the stage to use me when the opportunity arose. After moving to Chicago, I struggled to establish myself financially. With only 2 years of community college education, breaking into the graphic design field was challenging. I started at the bottom working as a production assistant at a small marketing agency, where I spent my days formatting files and making minor edits to other designers' work. The pay was barely enough to cover my expenses, but it was a foot in the door. My apartment was a tiny studio in a less desirable neighborhood, with noisy neighbors and maintenance issues that the landlord consistently ignored. Still, it was mine paid for with my own money, and that gave me a sense of pride my parents had never acknowledged. Over 7 years, I worked my way up to become a junior graphic designer, and eventually a mid-level designer at a boutique agency. The pay improved enough that I could afford a slightly better one-bedroom apartment and no longer had to choose between buying groceries or putting gas in my car. But I was still living paycheck to paycheck with no substantial savings to fall back on. During those years, I formed close friendships with two coworkers, Amelia and Diego. Unlike my family, they truly saw me, valued my talents, and celebrated my successes. Our weekly dinner tradition began as an affordable way to socialize with each of us, taking turns cooking at our apartments. These evenings became my sanctuary, a place where I felt accepted and appreciated for exactly who I was. My dating life during this time consisted of a series of relationships that ultimately did not work out. There was Mark, who initially seemed supportive, but gradually began criticizing my career choice. Then came Tyler, who I dated for almost 2 years before discovering he had been cheating with a woman from his office. After that came Stefan, who wanted me to give up my career ambitions to follow him to Seattle for his job. By 33, I was single again, focusing on myself and my career, not actively looking for a relationship, but open to possibilities. Just when I thought I was finally getting ahead financially, life threw obstacles in my path. An emergency appendectomy left me with medical bills my insurance only partially covered. 6 months later, my car's transmission failed, requiring a costly repair I could not afford to skip, since I needed reliable transportation to work. Each setback forced me to rely on credit cards, building debt that kept me tethered to financial insecurity. Despite the challenges, I found small pleasures that kept me going. Weekly dinners with Amelia and Diego were sacred. We would talk for hours, sharing our dreams and frustrations, supporting each other through job stresses and personal disappointments. I also maintained my art practice, setting up a small workspace in the corner of my apartment, where I would paint on weekends, creating pieces that rarely sold but fed my soul. One small indulgence I allowed myself was buying a scratch-off lottery ticket every payday. $5 twice a month was not going to make or break my budget. And those brief moments of possibility before scratching off the numbers gave me a flutter of hope that someday things might get easier. My dreams were modest by most standards. I wanted to pay off my student loans and credit card debt. I dreamed of owning a small condo instead of renting, having a place that was truly mine that no one could take away. I fantasized about having enough financial security to focus more on my personal art, without the constant pressure of needing every freelance gig that came my way. 3 months before my lottery win, the agency where I worked announced downsizing. Despite my years of service and positive performance reviews, I was among those laid off. The severance package was minimal, just 2 weeks' pay, barely enough to cover 1 month's expenses. The job market was brutally competitive. I sent out dozens of applications each week, customizing my portfolio and cover letters for each position. I had several promising interviews that ended with the same response. We went with a candidate whose experience better aligned with our needs. Translation: someone younger with more digital platform experience, willing to work for less. As my savings dwindled, I made the difficult decision to downsize my living situation. I gave notice on my apartment and began searching for a room to rent in a shared house, something that would cut my housing expenses in half. I sold furniture and clothes I did not absolutely need, trying to build a small financial cushion while I continued job hunting. The day before I bought the winning lottery ticket was particularly brutal. I had received yet another rejection email from what I thought had been a promising interview. My apartment's water heater had broken, leaving me with cold showers for 3 days while the landlord delayed repairs. And a check from a freelance job I had completed was late, forcing me to dip into the last of my emergency fund to make my car payment. That night, I sat on my partially dismantled furniture, surrounded by packing boxes, wondering if moving back to Pennsylvania and swallowing my pride to ask my parents for help might be my only option. The thought filled me with dread. I knew exactly how that conversation would go. My father would lecture me about the instability of a creative career. My mother would suggest I move home and look for something more practical. And Jason, now a financial advisor with a house in the suburbs, would offer condescending advice about how I should have planned better. I went to bed determined to try everything else before resorting to that option. Little did I know that fate had a different plan entirely for me. The morning of what would become the most transformative day of my life began like any other. I woke up early, sent out 5 more job applications, and then headed to a coffee shop where I had arranged to meet a potential client for a freelance project. The meeting went well, but the budget was small, barely enough to cover next month's rent if I got the job. On my way home, I stopped at the corner store to pick up some groceries. It was a Tuesday, not my usual payday, but something made me pause at the lottery display. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was intuition, but I decided to use $5 from my grocery budget to purchase a scratch-off ticket. The cashier, an older man named Frank, who knew me as a regular customer, smiled as he handed me the ticket. "Feeling lucky today?" he asked. "I need to feel something besides worried," I replied with a weak laugh. "Well, this is a new game they just put out. Better odds, they say." I tucked the ticket into my wallet, finished my shopping, and headed home. The rain that had been threatening all day finally began to fall. As I walked the 3 blocks to my apartment, seeming to mirror my mood. Once home, I unpacked my meager groceries and made a simple dinner of pasta, with jarred sauce, saving half for the next day's lunch. It was not until I was sitting at my small kitchen table sipping tea and working on a job application that I remembered the lottery ticket in my wallet. I retrieved it and grabbed a coin to scratch off the silver coating. I had a system. I always uncovered the winning numbers first, then scratched my numbers one by one, prolonging the small thrill of possibility. The winning numbers were 8, 17, 24, 36, and 42. I began uncovering my numbers. The first was a 19, no match. The second was a 33, again, no match. The third was a 17, a match. I would win something at least. Probably $5 or $10, but even that small amount felt like a victory. I continued scratching. The fourth number was a 24, another match. The fifth was an 8. 3 matches now. My heart began to beat faster. The sixth was a 42, 4 matches. And the seventh, the final number, was a 36. I had matched all 5 winning numbers. My hands trembling, I slowly scratched off the prize amount. At first, I thought I was seeing it wrong. There were too many zeros. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and looked again. The prize read $5,200,000. I sat frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. This could not be real. I checked the numbers again, comparing each one carefully. They all matched. I turned the ticket over, reading the fine print about how to claim prizes, confirming that this was indeed the jackpot. The reality hit me in waves. First came disbelief, my brain refusing to accept this sudden change in fortune. Then came a burst of hysterical laughter, followed immediately by tears streaming down my face. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the ticket. I placed it carefully on the table, afraid to damage it, afraid it might somehow disappear if I looked away. It was nearly midnight when I finally calmed down enough to call someone. Amelia answered with a groggy, "Hello," clearly having been asleep. "I need you to tell me I am not hallucinating," I said, my voice still trembling. "Valerie, what is wrong? Are you okay? I think I just won the lottery, the big one." "What, are you serious? I need you to come over, please. I need someone else to look at this ticket and tell me it is real." 30 minutes later, Amelia was standing in my kitchen. Her hair hastily pulled back, wearing mismatched clothes she had thrown on in her rush to get to me. She examined the ticket, carefully checking the numbers multiple times just as I had done. "Oh my God, Valerie, this is real. You really won." We stayed up all night talking through what this meant, researching what steps I needed to take, making lists of what to do and what not to do. Neither of us had experience with this kind of windfall. We looked up lottery winner stories, learning about those who had squandered their winnings and those who had managed them wisely. By morning, I had a plan, but I had not slept a wink. First thing the next morning, I called the state lottery office. They confirmed that I needed to come in person to claim a prize of this size. I took an Uber, unwilling to risk driving in my sleep-deprived, emotionally overwhelmed state. The lottery officials verified my ticket, took my identification, and explained the process. I learned that I had 2 options: take a lump sum payment that would be significantly less than the full amount, or receive annual payments over 20 years. After taxes, the lump sum would give me approximately $2.8 million all at once. The annual payment option would give me about $260,000 per year after taxes. The Lottery Commission had arranged for winners to meet with a financial advisor right there in their offices. The advisor, a woman named Stephanie, spent an hour walking me through the pros and cons of each option. She explained that many winners chose the lump sum, but often ended up spending it too quickly or making poor investment decisions. The annual payment option builds in discipline, she explained. It gives you time to learn how to manage wealth and protects you from yourself in those early years, when sudden wealth can lead to impulsive decisions. After careful consideration, I chose the annual payment option. My first check would be deposited within 2 weeks. In the meantime, Stephanie helped me set up a meeting with another financial advisor who specialized in working with lottery winners and others who came into sudden wealth. That evening, I invited both Amelia and Diego to dinner at a nice but not extravagant restaurant to share my news and celebrate. We toasted with champagne, and I shared my initial plans paying off all my debt, buying a modest house in a safe neighborhood, setting up retirement accounts, and investing the rest wisely. I wanted to continue working in design, but planned to be selective about projects focusing on work that fulfilled me creatively. I cannot believe how level-headed you are being about this, Diego said. Most people would be planning exotic vacations and shopping sprees. I have spent my whole life feeling financially insecure, I replied. This is my chance to never feel that way again. I am not going to waste it. The local news picked up the story of my win as they did with all major jackpot winners. The piece was brief, mentioning only my first name, and that I was a Chicago resident who planned to pay off debt and invest wisely. But it was enough. The morning after the story aired, my phone rang. It was my mother. Valerie, we just saw the news. Is it true? Did you really win the lottery? Yes, Mom, it is true, I confirmed, surprised by the slight tremor in my voice. There was a long pause on the line, and I could hear my father's voice in the background asking questions. That is wonderful news, sweetheart. Your father and I are so happy for you. My mother finally said, her voice unusually high-pitched and enthusiastic. We should celebrate as a family. Why do not you come home this weekend? I will make your favorite meal just like when you were little. Something about her tone felt off, but I pushed aside my suspicions. Perhaps this was an opportunity to rebuild our relationship now that I was in a more stable position. I could drive down Saturday, I agreed cautiously. Perfect. We will see you at 6. Oh, and Jason and Megan will be here too. They will be so excited to see you. The call ended with my mother telling me how proud they were, words I had rarely heard from her throughout my life. I sat staring at my phone, conflicted emotions swirling through me. Part of me wanted to believe this was genuine, that my parents were truly happy for my good fortune. Another part, the protective self I had developed over years of disappointment, whispered warnings. That Saturday, I drove the 4 hours to my parents' house in Pennsylvania. It had been over a year since my last visit, and I noticed immediately how much the property had deteriorated. The once meticulously maintained lawn was overgrown in patches. The exterior paint was peeling in places, and the front steps sagged slightly. These details registered as unusual, as my father had always taken immense pride in the appearance of his home. My mother answered the door before I could knock, pulling me into an embrace that felt both familiar and strange. There she is, our lucky girl, she exclaimed loudly enough that I wondered if she was performing for someone else. Inside, I found my father, brother Jason, and his wife Megan waiting in the living room. My father offered a stiff hug while Jason merely nodded from his seat. Megan, whom I had only met twice before, gave me a warm smile that seemed genuinely friendly. So, the starving artist is not so starving anymore, huh? Jason said, his attempt at humor falling flat. Dinner was a strange affair. My mother had indeed prepared the lasagna she knew I loved, but the conversation felt stilted, with unusual pauses and meaningful glances exchanged between my parents and Jason. They asked surface-level questions about my life in Chicago, but quickly steered any discussion toward financial topics. Real estate is such a good investment right now, my father commented while passing the salad. Your brother has been trying to get into investment properties, have not you, Jason? Jason launched into a detailed explanation of a property development opportunity he had recently discovered, which required significant capital but promised guaranteed returns. I nodded politely, noticing how my parents looked at him with undisguised admiration. As we moved to dessert, my father cleared his throat and placed his napkin on the table with deliberate care. Valerie, there is something we wanted to talk to you about. We are so proud of your good fortune. My mother jumped in, reaching across to pat my hand. and we have been thinking about family and how important it is that we support each other. My father continued. The truth is, we have been having some financial difficulties lately. The economy, and healthcare costs are just astronomical. Over the next 20 minutes, the real purpose of the celebration became painfully clear. My father detailed their financial problems, a second mortgage they had taken out 3 years ago, that they were struggling to pay credit card debt accumulated from what he vaguely described as necessary expenses, and my mother's ongoing treatment for arthritis that their insurance covered only partially. We have always done everything we could for both our children, my mother said, her eyes welling with tears that seemed practiced. We never asked for anything in return. But now, well, we are not getting any younger. Then Jason leaned forward, his expression serious. And I need to be honest with you too, sis. My business has hit some rough patches. Nothing I cannot turn around with the right capital investment, but the banks just are not lending to small businesses like they used to. The coordinated family plea continued with specific amounts now being mentioned. My parents needed $75,000 to clear their most pressing debts. Jason needed $120,000 to save his financial consulting business and pay off what he called temporary cash flow problems. After all we have done for you, my father said, his voice taking on a hard edge I remembered from childhood scoldings. This is just family taking care of family. Blood is thicker than water, my mother added, squeezing my hand with surprising strength. Jason's contribution was the most revealing. Look, you just got lucky with some random ticket. I have been working hard my whole life building something real. This is your chance to finally contribute to the family. I sat in stunned silence, processing their coordinated assault on my boundaries. I need some time to think about this. I finally managed, my voice steadier than I felt. This is all very sudden. Jason's face darkened with poorly concealed frustration. What is there to think about? It is not like you earned this money. I should use the restroom, I said, needing a moment alone to collect myself. As I walked down the hallway, I could hear their voices continuing in the dining room, not as hushed as they probably thought. She is going to be difficult about this, Jason was saying. We need to push harder. Give her time, my father replied. Once we get the first amount, we can work on getting her to hand over more. She has always been eager for approval. She owes us this, my mother added, all traces of warmth gone from her voice, after everything we sacrificed for her. I stood frozen, my childhood home suddenly feeling like hostile territory. I slipped into the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and made a decision. I would leave now before the situation escalated further. I returned to the dining room, made an excuse about not feeling well, and despite their protests, got into my car and drove away. The entire 4-hour drive back to Chicago, tears streamed down my face. I had allowed myself to hope briefly that my good fortune might heal old wounds in my family. Instead, it had revealed that those wounds were even deeper than I had realized. They did not see me as a daughter or sister deserving of love and happiness. They saw me as a resource to be exploited. The betrayal cut deep, reopening all the childhood pain I thought I had put behind me. In the weeks following that disastrous dinner, my family launched what could only be described as a harassment campaign. My parents called daily, leaving voicemails that alternated between guilt trips, appeals to family loyalty, and thinly veiled demands. My phone filled with text messages from Jason, initially cajoling but quickly turning hostile when I did not immediately comply with his requests. You have always been selfish, one message read. This is your chance to finally do something for the family instead of just thinking about yourself. The pressure escalated when my parents showed up unannounced at my apartment one Tuesday morning. I had just received my first lottery payment and moved into a temporary rental while looking for a permanent home. Somehow they had obtained my new address. We drove all night to see you, my mother said, her expression a practiced mixture of exhaustion and reproach. The least you can do is invite us in. I reluctantly let them enter, setting firm boundaries about the length of their visit. For 2 hours they alternated between reminiscing about family memories that seemed suspiciously rosy and dropping heavy hints about their financial needs. When I finally asked them directly to leave, my father's face hardened in a way I remembered from childhood disappointments. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us, he said as they walked out the door. The situation worsened when Jason created a social media post about being abandoned by family in times of need. And without naming me directly, he painted himself as a hardworking small business owner whose sister had received undeserved wealth and refused to help her struggling family. The post was shared among extended family members and hometown acquaintances, prompting a flood of messages from distant relatives and old classmates questioning my character. Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, whom I had always been close to, called to ask if I was really letting Jason lose his business when I had so much money just sitting there. Uncle Robert emailed a lengthy lecture about family responsibility and how disappointed my grandparents would have been in my selfish behavior. Even my second cousin Emma, whom I had not spoken to in years, sent a Facebook message suggesting I was morally obligated to help my brother, since I did not earn the money anyway. The constant pressure began to take a serious toll on my mental and physical health. I developed anxiety attacks, waking in the night with my heart racing, unable to catch my breath. I lost weight as my appetite disappeared, and dark circles formed under my eyes from insomnia. The joy and relief I should have been feeling about my financial windfall was completely overshadowed by the stress of fending off my family's demands. Seeking professional guidance, I met with the financial advisor the Lottery Commission had connected me with. Sarah listened sympathetically to my situation before offering practical advice. Unfortunately, what you are experiencing is very common among lottery winners, she explained. Sudden wealth often brings out the worst in the people around you, especially family members who feel entitled to a share. She recommended that I consult with an attorney specializing in cases involving sudden wealth. You need to protect yourself and your assets. Setting clear legal boundaries now will save you years of emotional manipulation and financial pressure. My friend Amelia, who had witnessed my deteriorating state, made the same suggestion. You need legal protection, Val. This is not going to stop on its own. The following week, I met with attorney Marcus Bennett, who had extensive experience working with lottery winners and inheritance recipients. His office was warm and inviting, designed to put clients at ease, a stark contrast to the cold tension that had characterized my recent family interactions. Your story is unfortunately common, Marcus said after I had explained the situation. But you have every legal right to protect your winnings. This is your money, not a family community fund. Winning the lottery does not obligate you to solve everyone else's financial problems. He advised me to document all contact from family members, especially anything that could be construed as harassment or threats. He also suggested temporarily changing my phone number and being extremely cautious about who had access to my new address and contact information. It might also be wise to temporarily relocate while we get this sorted out, he added. Sometimes a physical barrier is necessary when emotional boundaries are being violated. Taking his advice, I checked into an extended stay hotel under a pseudonym, sharing my new temporary number only with Amelia Diego and my attorney. For a few days, the relief of being unreachable gave me space to breathe and think clearly about next steps. But my family's determination should not be underestimated. Somehow likely through social media check-ins or mutual acquaintances, they discovered where I worked. One afternoon, my father and Jason appeared at the design studio where I was consulting on a project. The receptionist, unaware of the situation, allowed them into the waiting area and called me to the front. Seeing them there in the professional space I had worked so hard to establish sent a shock of anxiety through my system. My colleagues witnessed my visible distress as I tried to calmly ask my family to leave. Jason became loud and confrontational, causing my project manager and several designers to emerge from their offices. Your sister thinks she is too good for her family now that she has money, Jason announced to the horrified onlookers. Ask her why she will not help her brother when she is sitting on millions. Security was called and they were escorted out, but the damage to my professional reputation felt irreparable. My coworkers were supportive, but clearly uncomfortable with having been dragged into my personal drama. The incident left me feeling violated in yet another aspect of my life. The emotional toll became so severe that I sought help from a therapist specializing in family trauma. Nelson helped me work through the complex feelings of guilt, obligation, and resentment that had been triggered by the situation. You are experiencing what we call financial abuse, she explained in one session. Your family is using emotional manipulation to control your financial resources. The guilt you feel is a conditioned response from years of being made to feel that your needs were less important than your brother's. Through weekly sessions, I began the painful process of examining the family dynamics that had shaped my sense of self-worth. I realized that my lottery win had not created the problem. It had merely exposed the unhealthy patterns that had always existed in my family relationships. In the midst of this chaos, I received an unexpected message from Jason's wife, Megan. She asked to meet privately away from Jason's knowledge. Cautious but curious, I agreed to a coffee shop meeting in a suburb halfway between our locations. Megan arrived looking nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder as if afraid of being followed. "Jason does not know I am here," she began, her voice low. "But there are things you should know about what is really going on." Over the next hour, Megan revealed disturbing information about my family's financial situation. Jason, she confided, had a gambling problem that had worsened over the past few years. His business difficulties were largely the result of him using company funds to cover gambling debts. My parents were fully aware of the situation, but continued to enable him, repeatedly bailing him out with money they could not afford to give. They remortgaged their house to pay off his debts last year, she explained, twisting her wedding ring anxiously. That is why their home is falling apart. They cannot afford the basic maintenance anymore. Most shocking was her revelation about their plans for my lottery money. They have already promised Jason they will give him most of whatever they get from you. He has convinced them that he just needs enough capital to launch a new business venture, but I know the truth. He has already been talking to his gambling friends about investments that are really just thinly disguised betting schemes. I sat stunned, absorbing this new information. "Why are you telling me this, Megan?" Her eyes welled with tears. "Because it has to stop. They have been enabling him for years, and it is destroying everyone. I have tried to get him into treatment, but he refuses to admit he has a problem. Your parents make it worse by always rescuing him. If you give them money now, it will just continue the cycle." As I drove home from this meeting, pieces began falling into place. The increasing desperation in my family's attempts to access my money, the vague explanations about where previous funds had gone, my parents' deteriorating home conditions despite their middle-class incomes. It all pointed to a family system built around protecting and enabling Jason regardless of the cost to anyone else, including themselves. That night, Jason called me at 1 in the morning, clearly intoxicated. His speech was slurred, but his message was crystal clear. "You think you're better than all of us now with your lucky ticket, don't you? We're family. You're supposed to help family. If you don't help us, you're going to regret it. I promise you that." I recorded the call, my hands shaking as I held the phone. His explicit threat was the final confirmation that I needed to take decisive action to protect myself and my future. After Jason's threatening late-night call, I knew the situation had reached a breaking point. The combination of harassment, emotional manipulation, and now explicit threats made it clear that this conflict would not resolve itself. My family's behavior would continue to escalate until I either gave in to their demands or took definitive action to end the cycle. The next morning, I called Dr. Nelson and scheduled an emergency therapy session. "I need to confront my family directly," I explained, "but I need help preparing for that conversation so I don't get manipulated or lose control." Over the next 2 days, Dr. Nelson helped me prepare for what would inevitably be an emotionally charged confrontation. We role-played different scenarios, with her taking on the parts of my parents, and Jason throwing their most common guilt tactics at me, while I practiced maintaining my boundaries. "Remember, you cannot control how they respond," she advised. "You can only control what you say and how you react. Your goal is not to change their minds or make them see your perspective. Your goal is to clearly state your boundaries and the consequences if those boundaries are violated." With my therapist's guidance, I decided to arrange the meeting on neutral ground. I reserved a private room at a restaurant halfway between Chicago and my parents' home in Pennsylvania. The setting would provide privacy, while also ensuring we were in a public enough space to discourage extreme behavior. I asked Amelia and Diego to come with me as support, though they would wait in the main dining area during the actual confrontation. "Just knowing you are nearby will help me stay strong," I told them as we drove to the meeting. Before entering the private room, I took a deep breath and centered myself, reviewing the key points I wanted to make. I had prepared an opening statement and rehearsed it multiple times, determined not to be thrown off course by whatever tactics my family might employ. My parents and Jason arrived together, their expressions a mixture of annoyance and entitlement as they entered the room. My mother attempted to hug me, but I stepped back, gesturing for them to take seats across the table from me. This physical positioning was deliberate, a visual reinforcement that we were now on opposite sides of an issue, not united as they had always insisted families should be. "Thank you for coming." I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "I have asked for this meeting because the current situation between us needs to be resolved. The constant calls, messages, surprise visits, and public confrontations have become harassment, and it needs to stop. My father immediately tried to interrupt, but I held up my hand. Please, I need you to listen first. I have listened to all of you for weeks now. It's my turn to speak. Surprisingly, they fell silent, perhaps taken aback by this new assertiveness from the daughter they had always been able to dismiss or talk over. I understand that you believe my lottery winnings should be shared with family. I understand that you have financial needs. But the way you have approached this, the demands, the guilt trips, the threats has destroyed any trust between us. Jason's call to me 2 nights ago crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. At this point, I played the recording of Jason's drunken, threatening call. My mother's face paled as she heard her son's slurred voice promising that I would regret not helping the family. My father stared at the table, unable to meet my eyes. Jason himself flushed red, a mixture of embarrassment and anger contorting his features. I did not know what I was saying, Jason protested when the recording ended. I had a few drinks. You cannot hold that against me. This is exactly the problem, I continued, ignoring his excuses. None of you take responsibility for your actions. For years, I have been the invisible child in this family. When Jason needed baseball equipment, you found the money. When I needed art supplies, I was told to wait. When Jason wanted to go to a private university, you paid his full tuition. When I asked for help with community college, I was told to take out loans. I detailed specific examples from our childhood and young adult years, instances of blatant favoritism that had shaped my sense of worth and place in the family. With each example, my mother's expression grew more distressed, while my father's jaw tightened defensively. Even now, you are not approaching me as your daughter who you love and want to help succeed. You are approaching me as a resource to be used primarily to benefit Jason. Again. I placed a folder on the table between us. Inside this folder is documentation of every call, text, email, and visit you have made since learning of my lottery win. It includes Jason's social media posts designed to pressure me through extended family and statements from my coworkers about your disruption at my workplace. My attorney has advised me that this constitutes harassment and could be grounds for a restraining order. My father's face darkened with anger. You would take legal action against your own parents after everything we have done for you. I do not want to, I replied truthfully, which is why I am offering a different solution. I outlined my terms clearly. First, I would provide a one-time gift of $30,000 specifically for my mother's medical expenses, paid directly to her healthcare providers, not given as cash. Second, I would provide nothing for Jason or his business. Third, I required 6 months of no contact from any of them, a complete break to allow wounds to heal and new boundaries to be established. Finally, if they wanted to reestablish contact after those 6 months, it would be contingent on family counseling sessions to address the long-standing patterns of favoritism and manipulation. These terms are non-negotiable, I concluded. The choice now is yours. You can accept these boundaries, or I will have no choice but to use legal means to enforce them. Jason exploded, leaping to his feet. This is bullshit. You are sitting on millions and you offer a pathetic 30 grand. You selfish bitch. You have always been jealous of me and now you are using this money to get revenge. His outburst laid bare the entitlement and anger that had always simmered beneath his golden child facade. My parents watched in shock as their son, always presented as the reasonable, responsible one, revealed his true character. Do you see now? I asked quietly, looking directly at my parents. This was never about family helping family. This is about Jason feeling entitled to what is mine, and you enabling that entitlement just as you always have. My father started to speak, likely to defend Jason as he always did, but my mother placed a restraining hand on his arm. For the first time, I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes, perhaps the beginning of an understanding of the dynamic she had helped create and sustain. Jason, realizing he had overplayed his hand, stormed toward the door. This is not over, he threatened. If you think you can cut off your family like this, you are wrong. I will contest the lottery win. I will tell everyone what an ungrateful daughter and sister you are. After he left, a heavy silence fell over the room. My parents sat side by side, suddenly looking older and smaller than I remembered. My father still radiated anger and disapproval, but my mother's expression had shifted to something more complex, a mixture of confusion and dawning realization. He has always been like this when he doesn't get his way, she said softly, almost to herself. We just never let ourselves see it. It was the first honest thing she had said in our entire interaction. a tiny crack in the facade of family mythology they had constructed over decades. It was not acceptance or apology, but it was a start. Think about what I have said. I told them gathering my things to leave. The offer stands, but my boundaries are firm. The choice now is yours. As I walked out of that room, I felt a weight lifting. For the first time in my life, I had faced my family not as the perpetually disappointing daughter desperate for approval, but as an adult with the right to protect herself and her future. Whether they accepted my terms or not, I had finally broken free of the obligation to sacrifice my needs for theirs. 6 months passed since that confrontation at the restaurant. 6 months of silence from my family that initially felt strange and unsettling, but gradually transformed into a peaceful space where I could heal and rebuild. In that time, my life underwent a transformation far more significant than the financial windfall that had triggered the family crisis. I purchased a modest but comfortable 3-bedroom home in a safe Chicago neighborhood. Nothing extravagant, no marble countertops or swimming pools, but a solid investment with character and charm. The house had a detached garage that I converted into an art studio, a space fully mine where I could create without constraint or judgment. With the guidance of my financial advisor, Sarah, I made careful decisions about my newfound wealth. I paid off all my debts first, clearing the student loans and credit card balances that had haunted me for years. I established an emergency fund large enough to cover a full year of expenses. I set up retirement accounts and a diversified investment portfolio designed for long-term growth rather than quick returns. "You are one of the most level-headed lottery winners I have ever worked with," Sarah commented during one of our quarterly review meetings. "Most people in your position would have spent far more by now." "I spent too many years feeling financially insecure," I explained. "I never want to feel that way again." With my basic financial security established, I made another significant life change. I enrolled in courses to complete the design degree I had abandoned years ago when money ran too tight. The classes reignited my passion for design and connected me with a community of creative professionals who valued the skills and perspective I brought to the table. One of those connections led to an unexpected business opportunity. Diego, who had been my rock throughout the family ordeal, approached me with a proposal to start our own small design studio. With my financial backing and his industry connections, we launched Valente Designs, a boutique firm specializing in branding for small businesses and nonprofits. I never thought I would be a business owner. I admitted to Diego on the day we signed the lease for our small office space. That was always Jason's territory in my family. "You will be a better one," Diego assured me, "because you understand what it is like to struggle and be undervalued. That gives you empathy for clients that most agencies lack." My therapeutic journey continued throughout these months of external change. Weekly sessions with Dr. Nelson helped me process the complex emotions surrounding my family estrangement and confront the deep-seated beliefs about my worth that had been implanted during my childhood. "The most insidious aspect of growing up as the less favored child is that you internalize the message that you are less deserving," Dr. Nelson explained. "Undoing that programming is not about changing your family. It is about changing how you see yourself." Gradually, I began to recognize my own value independent of external validation. I learned to celebrate my accomplishments without automatically comparing them to someone else's. I practiced setting boundaries in all my relationships, communicating my needs clearly and without apology. As the 6-month mark approached, I wondered if my family would reach out if they would be willing to accept the terms I had established for potential reconciliation. My mother was the first to contact me, sending a brief email that showed the first real signs of reflection I had ever seen from her. "These months of silence have been difficult but necessary," she wrote. "Your father and I have had many conversations about the past and the ways we may have hurt you without intending to. We would like to try family counseling if you are still willing." Our first session was scheduled for the following week, a tentative step toward rebuilding a relationship on new, healthier terms. I had no illusions that one or even dozens of therapy sessions would completely transform our family dynamic, but I was cautiously optimistic that at least my parents were willing to examine their behavior. Jason remained estranged, refusing to participate in counseling and maintaining that I was the one at fault. Through my mother, I learned that his business had ultimately failed, and he had taken a job with a financial services company. His gambling issues remained unaddressed, creating ongoing tension in his marriage with Megan. I felt sadness for the brother I had never truly been allowed to know, hidden as he was behind the golden child facade our parents had constructed. Beyond my immediate family, I found new ways to create meaningful connections. I began volunteering at an after school arts program for underprivileged teens, many of whom reminded me of myself at that age, creative, eager for validation, but lacking the resources to fully develop their talents. Using a portion of my lottery winnings, I established an annual scholarship for art students who lacked family financial support. The Valerie Barnes Second Chance Scholarship would cover full tuition for two students each year, providing the opportunity I had been denied. My personal life blossomed as well. Through a graphic design conference, I met Michael, a web developer, whose quiet confidence and genuine interest in my work gradually developed into a deeper connection. Unlike previous relationships, this one began with me feeling secure in myself and clear about my boundaries. Michael valued my independence and creativity, never seeking to diminish or control me. "I like that you know exactly who you are," he told me one evening as we walked along the lakefront. "So many people are still trying to figure that out." I laughed. Trust me, it was a hard-won discovery. As I settled into my new life, I often reflected on the strange paradox of my lottery win. The money that I thought would solve all my problems had instead forced me to confront the most painful aspects of my past. The financial freedom had not bought happiness directly, but it had given me the space and resources to discover what truly mattered to me, to heal old wounds, and to build a life aligned with my authentic self. In an unexpected way, the family crisis triggered by my win had been the catalyst for my most important personal growth. By forcing me to stand up for myself, to set boundaries, and to examine the unhealthy patterns that had shaped me, the conflict had ultimately led to liberation. I was no longer the invisible child, the afterthought, the one who had to earn love that was freely given to others. The real value of the lottery win was not in the dollars and cents it added to my bank account, but in the freedom it gave me to discover my worth, independent of anyone else's validation. I had spent decades believing that if I just worked hard enough, achieved enough, or sacrificed enough, I would finally earn the love and recognition my brother received automatically. Now I understood that some gifts cannot be earned because they should never be withheld in the first place. For anyone watching this who has felt overlooked in their family or made to feel that their needs and dreams were less important than someone else's, I want you to know that your value is inherent. It does not depend on someone else's ability to see it. You do not need to win the lottery to claim your worth, though having financial resources can certainly make it easier to create the physical and emotional space needed to heal. If my story resonates with you, please share your experiences in the comments below. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? What helped you recognize your own worth? Like this video, if it spoke to you, subscribe for more stories of overcoming family challenges, and share with someone who might need to hear that they deserve more than being the invisible child. Remember, sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the permission to walk away from relationships that diminish rather than enhance our lives. Thank you for listening to my journey.